Mike, Jack, thank you so much for coming. Can you just introduce yourself a bit and tell the listeners who you are?
Sure. So I'm Jack Simpson. I run Hyde Park Book Club, Eiger Studios. I'm one of the people that co-founded Leeds Lit Fest. I just generally work on various like cultural projects in the city and also do some teaching here in PCI and Polis.
Thank you. That's great. So before we get on to book club and everything that you're doing at the moment, let's talk about how you got there. Did you grow up in Leeds? Where are you from? Did you grow up in a musical household? How do you think you got to sort of doing music now? Well, working in music.
Sure. So I did grow up in Leeds, and I left, and around the time we started the book club, I was actually living in London, and kind of only accidentally came back really, and it was because of the book club. Yeah. But I grew up in a house where people were really into music, but I don't think it wasn't a house where people were earning a living in music or anything like that. People listened to music, and then I was always doing kind of pretty well at school until it's about 15, 16, and I got really into bands. I wanted to be in a band and couldn't imagine anything being better than being in a band. Yeah. And that kind of led me to really just becoming a bit overly into being in a band, and I kind of messed my A-levels up actually, and life for a little bit. Yeah. And so when I actually started to become a bit more kind of functioning, this was my late teens, early 20s. Functioning. Yeah, I think this happens to. I don't know, how many people you obviously both know people in bands, but I think it's getting a bit better now. I think it's a little healthier, but definitely when I was first in a band, it was it's a really unhealthy kind of environment, really.
I guess student lifestyle, especially in the first year, is a bit like that, and then if you're in a band, it's just you're gigging all the time.
Yeah,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, and so then basically when I was about 21, I started a little magazine with a friend that the aim of which was to bring together the kind of whole of the music scene in Leeds. And there were a couple of other resources, but we were one of the main resources. And then I just started to kind of put gigs on and club nights and earn a living from doing that, really. Always struggled to earn a living from playing music. Yeah. But facilitating other people doing things was a bit easier.
Works out easier.
Yeah.
What was your band called?
I was in a few, but I guess the band that, we did little tours, and we were in the Enemy, and that's that was great. A band called Rivers.
Yeah. Would you ever get back together?
One band I'm in called Invisible Hands never formally split up, but I think it was kind of just me and whoever I was playing with. So yeah. I don't know if it can split up.
Can you split up from yourself?
Do solo artists ever split up?
No.
They just stopped playing, right?
Maybe just you. Maybe a reunion. Is on the card.
Of me. Yeah. Just every day is just a reunion.
Are you a guitarist?
Yeah, I play guitar and sing. So I started off as a singer, really.
You should have brought your guitar.
I should have brought my guitar. Should have done the whole thing in melodies. Really, I started off writing words when I was I don't know, really young. And then I think when I saw bands, and I think it's a kind of interesting thing from around gender norms, because I went to a school that was it was fine, but it wasn't in a great part of Leeds, and I think growing up and watching people in bands and being reasonably sensitive and creative, I think being in a band was probably a way that I saw that as a guy you could you could be expressive and you could be creative in a way that was still kind of socially accepted. Yeah, I also did theatre and things like that, but it certainly didn't feel as cool me doing theatre at my school than being in a band.
The lead singer in a band.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I can understand that. It's a shame though, isn't it? I don't know if that's changing much. I hope it is, but it's difficult.
I think some stuff is definitely changing. It's always hard, really, in that I guess I just hang out now with really nice people. And so, yeah, for me, it feels like now, like, I maybe wouldn't have to kind of like conform to certain kind of like gender norms, but whether that's the kind of groups that I'm around, I don't know. In school, comprehensives, I don't know how much different it is now. I don't know. I just don't know.
I feel like probably for a lot of people, it's when you do get to uni, or you leave where you grew up, and those people that most people start to be like, okay, I don't have to conform to all of that. Like you meet a new group of friends, and it becomes a bit easier. But I guess you were in Leeds. So did you study at Leeds University?
Yeah, so I basically
all the way through.
Yeah, so basically was earning a living. Then fairly quickly I was earning a living, putting on gigs, putting on club nights.
Yeah.
I started Eiger, and then at that point, I guess it was the first time, like when you're promoting gigs, financially it's really up and down.
Yeah.
You have some months where you can't believe you've been paid to do this because it's just like putting on friends' bands and things like that. And then other months where you're like, you've worked one month and you've lost money because that's the nature of being a promoter. But once I started the studio at Eiger, I started like really steadily earning a living. And then I just got into like philosophy and politics. So I came here to do an undergrad in philosophy and politics.
Oh, okay, I do remember you saying that. And that's sort of, I don't want to get onto the book club yet, but that is sort of your vision behind book club, isn't it? Like that it's quite like the ethos of it.
Yeah, I think what happened was I was like really in a very kind of like guitar-y indie scene. And, like I loved that, but it was super hedonistic. Musically, maybe eventually isn't that interesting.
Yeah.
And so I just started putting on these kind of like, I mean, it was almost like having a breakdown when I look back, but I'd put on a band and I'd put on as a support, like some immersive theatre, and I'd put a poet on opening.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but I think I just got really bored and I was like, I was like, actually, and something started to happen because I'd been into such a rigid art form or genre. Once I started to be into music more generally and sound more generally, then for me, the kind of silos between all art forms just started to dissolve a bit, really. So, for me, music was the thing that I really wanted to do when I was a teenager. But it could have easily been photography or film or dance or theatre. And I think all these things are kind of doing the same thing. I think, obviously, maybe you moved by film or maybe you moved by music, but ultimately I think they're kind of humans trying to make sense of their internal worlds externally. And I think by us experiencing other people doing that, we get in touch with maybe bits that we can't communicate to ourselves about ourselves.
Yeah, and it's enriching. Like if you go through like your life and you've got nothing like new or creative, it's like I feel really sorry for people that don't have that. Like, I feel lucky because I'm a music student and I'm surrounded by music all the time, and I like drag my friends along to like the lunchtime concerts, and they always love it, and I'm like, well, yeah, you should come because it's really good for you to like experience something really different. Like the one on Friday was this really like modern jazz, and it was really like really amazing, and my friend was like, wow, and I was like, yeah, you should come more.
And do you make music?
I'm a singer. I don't really make music, sadly. I quite like to, but I'm not really there yet. But I'm
why
I don't know I think I used to do a bit like writing and stuff, but I don't seem to have done much recently. Maybe I need to be a bit more, meet some different people, go to some different art forms. But yeah, you did a PhD at Leeds as well?
Yeah.
So how long were you studying? 4 years?
Yeah, it was a bit longer actually. I think it was about 4.5 in the end. Yeah, and it was kind of over the pandemic. Very strange.
Was it? Oh, so it was quite recent.
Yeah, it was quite recent. Yeah.
So you did your undergrad recently as well?
No, that was quite a long time ago. So I did my undergrad probably about 2010 to 13. Then I did a master's straight after over in York. And then I moved to London. And I mean, to be honest, so I did philosophy and politics my undergrad. I did PPE as master's. And really, I think having spent so much time in this world of just kind of like slightly messy music world that's very, I guess, overly about emotions and the kind of expression. Then I kind of had this 4 years of kind of like being in a more kind of like place of reason. And I really thought I was not going to carry on working in culture. So when I went to London, really the idea was get a PhD, do some kind of political philosophy, or maybe work in politics, like a think tank or something like that. And I kind of felt like I'd had my time. I think also like I'd really, really wanted to kind of make it in a band. So like for me, the kind of, I don't know, like, once that wasn't going to happen, like all this other stuff, like being a promoter, was to facilitate being in a band.
Yeah.
And then it happened that I was like, now I'm earning a living, and I guess you even meet people and they see you as a promoter rather than a musician.
Yeah.
But actually, I guess for a few years I kind of struggled to really want to be back in music. I mean, I still sometimes find it a little hard in that, I don't know, like friends who've never worked in music or never been in music, I just like go to way more gigs than me. And I think part of it's difficult for me because like that's kind of what I wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess it's like when people...
Bit of a dream.
Yeah, and I guess it's like when people want to be like a footballer, like you can see how they would have a conflicted relationship afterwards with just being a football fan, because they're like, I actually wanted to do that.
Me, yeah. I think it's really hard, like anyone who studies like music or art or film or whatever, it's like, it's quite conflicting. And when I was deciding to study music at uni, you get a lot of people, I don't know if you had this as well, but you get a lot of people being like, don't, like, you're going to hate it. You're going to leave uni and hate it because, you know, it's what you love the most. And it's like making it into your degree and your everyday and your job. It's like, is it going to take away from like me loving it? Which I did a year at the conservatoire and I did find it there. Like I was just like, oh, I'm done. And I was actually going to study philosophy here because I'm really interested in philosophy. But and I was like, nah, just give it a go, give it one more go. And now like I actually love it, but it's because it's such a better community here. Like that's what I found personally. And like I've met so many great people and like that are really inspiring me. But like I think unless you're in that environment where it's really positive, like it's so easy to then like hate.
Yeah, I think as well your relationship changes, right? Yeah. So once I was earning a living from music, then I was listening to bands that emailed me, and I was like, is this you know, I'm listening for, are people going to come along to this event and all these kind of things.
It's crystal.
And that was just so different to when I was 15, 16 and the immediacy of being hit by a song.
Yeah.
And then I think you've kind of got two choices, really. A lot of friends went into it a little bit and were like, I'm going to keep that just as a hobby. And then for me, I kind of came out the other side, really, where probably for a year or so when I was about like 27, I did have like a really odd I'd put so much pressure on kind of like a band being successful, and then on a night it was like I'm listening to bands from other cities, but it's a kind of commercial thing, like how, you know, are these gonna, you know, it did warp my relationship with it. But for me, ultimately, I guess doing work that you feel has purpose. So some people I think are like, I'm going to go do a day job that I don't care about, and on a night I'm going to be in a choir, or, you know, I'm going to preserve this kind of the purity of it. Yeah. And for me, I think I always had this feeling also that I want my work to be really full of purpose. And so I couldn't really imagine, I mean, you know, the only other thing I think would be doing something overtly political, but for me, you know, doing the book club and doing the Lit Fest, they are kind of political acts, really. They're like, it's about kind of like providing space for other people, right?
Yeah. It's, music can be so political and like, yeah, I completely understand. I feel like that's two quite difficult paths to go down, like either be like really involved in politics or try and do it make it in the music industry. But I guess it's worked out sort of both ways.
I actually kind of like, I had a really like, in the middle of the pandemic, I had like this terrible hangover and I had like one of the strongest coffees that I've ever had. And I went for a walk and I had this almost like a eureka moment. I mean, I don't know if you have this when you, like, some of my best thoughts come when I'm hungover. Yeah. I'm like, I'm like, oh yeah, that just kind of makes sense. And one of them was really thinking about, I guess, art and politics, and thinking, you know, I guess I'm always like, you know, am I more into kind of like, you know, am I into like art because it's some kind of political thing, or am I into art for its own sake? And I actually think that art and politics are kind of the same, to some extent the same thing. Like, humans are trying to reorder the world, and whether that's with sound or with image or a healthcare system, we're trying to reorder the world to make it just like feel a bit better to be in for us and other people. So
make
sense. So I'm like, you know what? I'm like, for ages I was like, what?
I was gonna say you're like a politician.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I was like, for ages I was trying to kind of work out, like how do these things fit together, and I don't know.
So so you set up Iger Studios when you were how old?
I think it was about like 27, 28.
Okay. How did you set it up?
So at the time I was putting on gigs and club nights and really just because I was chatting to lots of people, I just had basically everybody who played music pretty much on my phone, like had their number.
Yeah.
And
in Leeds.
Yeah. I mean, that would be insane, especially with the kind of phone that you can get in 2007. Yeah. I mean, like it could probably only hold like.
You broke it.
Yeah, and a friend built the studio, and there's a band called The Music at the time who were like, the guy now, the singer, has written probably a couple of big pop songs that you've heard. He also sometimes plays in Kasabian. This guy called Rob Harvey.
Okay, yeah.
And so The Music were based there, and this friend had built the studio, and he was going to do it as business, really. It's Iger. But he didn't really know how to get people interested in it. So he basically just invited me down and wanted me to market it, I guess. And then after being there a little bit, like no one yet was coming, he couldn't work out what to pay me. So he was like, look, if you get half the money together, why don't we just do this together?
Okay.
So we did that. And it was like really life-changing for me because, obviously we're kind of working in music, getting steady income. I mean, you can have these kind of ups and downs, but getting steady income is really hard. And even, I lived outside the city for 3 years, but I've kind of earned a living from it since I was like 27, 28.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's just one of the things that you do as well.
Yeah.
So was it around the same time that you found Book Club or like?
No, that was much later, really.
Oh, okay.
So that was about, when was that? I think it's about 2015, 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that again was like, I was living in London, and that was a fancy dress shop, and they just had the kind of room as you're facing it, the little room to the left, the kind of snug we call it.
Yeah.
That was just empty, full
where
of boxes. Where the jazz is. Yeah.
And everyone knows about
where the jazz is at 8 p.m. on Thursdays, free entry. And it was full of cardboard boxes, and they were just using it as a storeroom. And they were like, "Why don't you come do something?" And at the time, I guess I was living in London, but I'd been in like Tokyo and Berlin. I've been in Brooklyn. I've been in these various places, just getting little ideas. Yeah. And I was like, we could do this like really nice coffee and really nice beers, but we'll do some events.
I love your lager.
I love your lager.
I think it's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you find that? Sorry, it's really off topic.
Yeah, but it's like you do these kind of like deals with like people that make booze or whatever, and they'll like have like, I don't know, they'll have some kind of like Czechoslovakian thing, and they're like, look, you can have this, it can be your house lager, that kind of thing.
That's nice.
Yeah,
it's kind of fruity.
But yeah, I mean, part of like, I mean, I love the book club like a kind of like I don't know. I talked to Nathan at Brunel about this actually. He and we were both saying how it's funny because people think you'd be really, you'd have like loads of ownership over it, like it's yours. But actually,
it's like community.
Yeah, it's kind of like, he says, he'll go around collecting glasses at the thing, and he's like, he doesn't go around being like, you're in my place.
Yeah.
And I feel the same about the book club. Like I go in sometimes and there's just great people there, and I'm like, my heart's really warm, and I'm like, if I went to another city, like, I don't know, if I was in another city, I'd be like, these are my kind of people. Yeah. And I think to be honest, on that, when we did Iger, and I love Iger, but the guy I started with, Ryan, he already had the bit of the vision for it. And over the years, like, 'cause it's just, he left and it's just me now. And then actually one of the members of staff, Dom, is now part of it. But with the book club, we were really like, we're just going to do something we love. We're like, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Yeah. But we, there was no kind of like try to second guess what other people would like. And it's funny because, the times when I just like, I'm in there and it's like just buzzing and it's just totally my kind of people. And I'm like, had I tried to think about, what do people want? It wouldn't have felt like it feels, the slight kind of chaos of the place, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
it is random.
it's uncontrollable. Like, I don't feel like I can, you know,
You're
like.
not sure.
And sometimes I'll go in and there's just like, I don't know, there's like a 8-foot bear in there, or like, I don't know, like an exhibition that like, I'm like, no one seems to know where this exhibition came from, or something like there's honestly like,
maybe
it's
I'll
like,
do that. Just set up my own exhibition.
It's totally just do it.
Yeah, I've got like a poster on my wall of like something from book club. I don't know what it is.
I probably know
it's
those.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
It's cool. I like it. But yeah, I think it's kind of a life lesson what you're saying. Like, if you went in being like, what's going to please everyone or please the majority, like it's the same with yourself. Like, you can't ever please anyone, but people. That's probably why when you go there, everyone you think is like, oh yeah, they're my kind of vibe.
Yeah,
it's your thing.
Yeah, I think as well, like, there's just something about being all in. And I think you think about this, like, I don't know, when you kind of like, especially when you're younger and like, maybe it's like, when I was younger or whatever, like whether it's social groups or relationships or whatever, and like, you kind of contort yourself, but like, you're kind of, you're kind of manifesting as something slightly different to you are, and therefore what you will attract. Yeah, you're attracting people that are interested in something that's slightly different to how you are.
It's like a therapy session. I feel like it's all making sense now. Okay.
I mean, a big thing really is, especially, you know, we live in these really politically divisive times, and whether this is about kind of like, you know, class, gender, race stuff, whatever, and I guess I always want it to feel really welcome, whoever you are, you know. And you could be a kind of like, I don't know, like a 60-year-old conservative voting person, and you should still come in and be treated kind of okay, and like, and we should, you know, we had we had Boris. So people drop off books, they just give us books, right?
Yeah.
And one of the books they gave us was like Boris Johnson's book on Winston Churchill, and I overheard these students. It's about 5 years ago, like really, like almost like I should burn it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know, we, you know, the kind of, I guess, I mean, I probably obviously I'm into kind of like leftist politics, but I think there's kind of like, if we have any hope in the future of having a bit more of a peaceful politics, it is that you can kind of be on a table with people that you maybe disagree with, but you can still be human with them, you know.
Oh yeah, hopefully.
I think it'll happen. It has to happen.
It's got to happen. Otherwise, there's no hope.
Yeah, but that thing, you know, I think sometimes a sense that I get, especially in the arts, you know, I grew up in like very kind of like well-meaning kind of like lefty arts culture, where like aesthetics were quite often. Kind of, I don't know, people make kind of like crap posters for stuff, but they're like, oh, it's kind of fine because like this is kind of like well-meaning, whatever. And then on the other end, I think you get people that do really exclusive stuff that's really kind of aesthetically brilliant, but like tries to make people feel a bit unwelcome. You know, it's like,
it's a bit exclusive.
Yeah, just like there are some bars that you go in or whatever where I'm like, the staff are trying to make me feel uncomfortable. Yeah. You know, I mean, like they're kind of like purposefully chatting for 5 minutes longer than they need to rather than serving someone. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm like, all the people that I knew that got really into music and culture are essentially like, I'm not saying they're kind of like nerds, but I'm like, they're at least introverts on some level.
Yeah.
There's something kind of introverted going on. And so I think that whether you run a record shop or a venue, like you should go out your way to make sure that everyone at least initially feels welcome. Now, if you act like a jerk when you're there, like obviously there is a limit to how much you have to make people feel welcome. But at least when people first come in, like, because, you know, the book club as well, there are people that come in on their own, and there are people that look like they're probably kind of anxious at times in their life. And like, I'm like, I don't want them to feel like this is actually a place where you have to feel cool before you come in, and, you know, that kind of stuff.
I do think that book club has a sort of like, people know that cool people go there in Leeds for students.
I mean, I think it kind of,
everyone looks very cool. Sometimes I think I'm not cool enough.
You're definitely cool enough. Like, I mean, I think that's the kind of holy grail, really. The holy grail for me is like, aesthetics are important, and you know, at times when we do well-meaning stuff, I think that like it's not kind of like cool or attractive enough, and I'm like, you can still care about like the aesthetics of things and make things inclusive. So that's the kind of like aim, you know, like yeah, you want the music to be really good, and you'll have people working on the bar who are like DJing really cool nights and stuff like that.
But like, so cool because they're so chilled and they're just like wearing their own clothes, and like chatting to you. And you don't feel like they're really working there.
I mean, don't say that. That's the kind of thing that makes me. I'll remember this at 5 tomorrow morning. I'll wake up and I'll be like, seems like the staff are not working.
No, they work. But it's more like, you know, when you go into a restaurant and you're like, yeah, okay, I'll have this, like, la la la. But they're like, you could be like, oh, do you want to come sit down? Like, obviously you're not going to, but like, you could.
Yeah, I mean, I think also, you know, if you are kind of, this stuff probably needs longer explanation, but you know, if you are kind of reasonably kind of like left or something, I think you have to like really work out what does a business mean, or what does what does it mean for people to come to work? Like, you know, it's different. So if you run like a Nero or something, it's like it's very clear what you're doing. But I think if you run something like the book club or the Brunel or Wharf, like it's like, how do you maintain even things to do with the hierarchies like we have at the book club, that like even you're 18 and you've started working here, you've been here 2 weeks, if you disagree with me, like you are you're encouraged to say it, because you know, it's like either we are real about being egalitarian, like or we're kind of not really. So and it's not always perfect, obviously, like, you know, no organization is, but I think that sense that you get that when people are there, they are just being themselves. It's not always perfect, but is this idea really that people don't need to kind of diminish who they are to be at work? You know?
It's such a hub in Leeds, like, because I've been to the book club for like probably 10 different reasons. Like each time is something totally different. Yeah, like Run Club, like I know, like Gravitate Run Club, like they use that book space, don't they? Which is cool. And they did the Spinners thing, like Friday night. That was really cool. And then like you've got the venue downstairs, but then also you could go in like 10 a.m. There's people like studying, reading. Then there's the jazz thing. Then you can have lunch. You can have brunch. It's like 100 things you can do. But like with the venue downstairs, like, is that, how do you like sort of book those events? Are you involved with that, or is that sort of left to someone?
Yes, it's like there's a really small team. There's me and Benny and Isabel, and generally, you know, we have a kind of like a calendar that we share, and you know, people get in touch. And so some of them are kind of like, I don't know, it might be Live Nation or some other kind of national promoter, or in Leeds it might be like the Brunel or Future Sound, and then lots of like DIY stuff where people are just like, I mean, lots of my favourite things are where somebody almost wasn't going to ever do an event, and they're like, I mean, I get emails that are like, hi, I'm a clown and I live in Hyde Park, can I come do my clown? Yeah, we get like, we've somehow like developed quite, it's not irregular to get an email from a clown.
You're joking?
No, I probably get an email from a clown at least once a month. Yeah.
That's
There's a lot of clowns about.
You're a clown?
I'm not a clown, no.
Maybe not yet. Maybe
one day I could be a
clown. Future career path.
Yeah. People are quite serious about clowning, though. Do you know the history?
Scared of clowns?
I think these are more like
funny clowns.
Yeah, like clowns that would be at Edinburgh Fringe kind of clowns.
Oh, okay. And so, what do they come? As pack
maybe
or singular.
I think generally singular.
In Hyde Park.
That's just, you've just set up so many potential jokes. But
I'm quite
dressed in traditional clown clothing.
I mean, I don't know a lot about clowning, but they call it clowning, and clowns go to clown school.
Oh yeah,
this is amazing.
Yeah.
I knew that from watching Modern Family.
And like, it's like this ancient kind of thing that was going on in Italy like 900 years ago. So some people are really... Do you know Joe Kemp Walters?
No.
He seems... So he just won a BBC award.
For clown?
Well, what he does is more a kind of like a comedy routine. But he hangs out with quite a lot of clowns.
That's great. My friend's a mime. Well,
I mean,
she's gonna kill me for saying it, but she got to like grade 8 mime lambda.
Grade 8 mime.
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Yeah. And
surely they're making up the grades
I've
for miming.
lived with this girl for 3 years. I found this out like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, "You're
How did you find out?"
I think she just sort of said it really casually, and we were like, "What?"
I feel like.
Can I book a gig?
Have you got like any video of her
No,
performing?
she's quite shy, but I feel like if we got an audience at book club.
I think you should message her.
Yeah.
I think you might need to drop her a message now and just say,
I've got you a gig.
Yeah, just say, I've got you a gig at the book club.
No, stop it.
Do it.
I say this
Yeah, do it.
She's like, good luck.
That's so funny.
Just say, I've got you a gig at the book club.
She's going to hate me.
We're going to get some art made and put up around there with, yeah.
We've got some clowns that want to help.
Yeah, there'll be,
How many clowns do you know?
I'd have to search clown on Gmail, but, I think there's one called, I think he's called either Mr. Chunky or Mr. Chunkers that emailed me, an American clown.
What's the demographic?
No, this guy's an American clown that wants to come over.
From America? Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Also, have you got a good photo of her? Just said, don't worry, I've sent them a photo for the artwork. Posters are going up next week.
This is live on pod.
Posters are going up next week.
Okay.
We also, you could, if you wanted to, you can get posters on those, the street sites around Leeds.
Yeah.
And there's some all around Hyde Park.
Poor girl. This is so funny. I've sent a good photo. So wait, when you have clowns come to book club, where do they go? And what do they do?
I guess they just do kind of like shows, really.
Do they go in the basement?
Yeah, they go in the basement. We have quite a lot of comedy now.
Yeah,
and comedy's like a really interesting industry as well, because you get people that have been on like 8 out of 10 Cats or some kind of big.
Well, that's so cool.
But you think about the equivalent of that in music would probably be, I don't know, playing the arena or something. And it's interesting that the kind of comedy network, I think it's maybe the history of comedy clubs as well, that people, there's something like that, almost like New Yorky kind of thing, so yeah.
Are you vegetarian?
I'm vegetarian, yeah.
And is that why book club is vegetarian?
Yeah, I think, we talked about it in the early days, and the first couple of years as well, we actually, it was losing money. Like the first 2 years, it was, we didn't really know what we were doing.
Like any business, though.
Yeah, like any business run by idiots. I was saying to somebody the other day, run by clans. I was saying to somebody the other day, actually, that it was only about an hour before we opened on the first day, and me and Chris that I started it with were like, how much do people even charge for coffee? We were just like,
I don't know.
really not from the school of serious business hospitality. But what were we saying before? How did we get onto this?
I don't know. I'm lost.
When sausage
why
rolls.
Are you vegetarian? Not why are you?
Just got to have a massive argument about vegetarian. So when we opened, he's vegetarian, I'm vegetarian.
Yeah.
And we'd not really even discussed it, but we just, I guess it seemed ridiculous to be vegetarians who wouldn't eat meat themselves, but would be running a business that was selling it now.
Yeah. Has the prices gone up? Am I allowed to ask that? For coffees?
Yeah, I think
everywhere.
Everything is crazy, right? As in across the whole of hospitality. It's, I guess the thought is, and I speak to kind of people your age, and the thought is, well, you are all potentially now going to do jobs where you get I don't know, 12 quid an hour, pretty much. Whereas, if you work in, say, hospitality, whereas only 6 or 7 years ago, those jobs would have been 7 quid an hour.
Yeah.
So people have probably got more to pay for coffee.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything has gone up. This last 3 or 4 years has just been, it's so much more expensive to run things now. You've seen, Sheaf Street, various places are just closing, really. So
yes, I know.
Yeah,
Prism, the coolest club in Leeds.
Prism.
Gutted.
What happened there?
What?
Been there.
What is going on in that space? Because that's an incredible space.
It's quite scary. Did you own a club or run? Did you do
I did club nights.
Club nights. What did that entail?
So when I was putting on gigs, I guess I was always not necessarily try to subvert it, but do something that interested me. So quite often I'd put on bands, and the headliner would go on about 12, and then it'd be DJs to 2 or 3.
So cool.
Yeah, and so it was kind of mixing up DJs with live music. A bit similar, I guess, in spirit, but not sound, to the more recent kind of We Out Here kind of vibe of actually there's DJs and bands are I don't know, as one really.
Yeah, that is really cool. I've not been to like many things recently where it is all like there's different things going on, which that would actually be really cool.
People have got to buy into the whole thing that they're coming to essentially club night with live music or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. I think I've been to Hi-Fi and they've had a DJ and someone on sax and a singer. I think that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
like I think that's great. Like because you get live music and you get DJ.
It's got a bit of everything.
Yeah.
I think it's so crazy for like your age group really, because when I was starting to play in a band, I guess a lot of bands were getting signed, and so people thought. I mean, I've got friends who like bought houses from like songs that they wrote when they were like 22, right? It's like who's still
Holding out hope.
Well, bands like, I don't know, Pigeon Sexes or The Music or stuff like that. I mean, like bands were selling, I don't know, 500,000 records and it was kind of physical stuff, so they're getting paid.
Yeah.
And I think that's really changed. And I think there's like a bunch of things going on. There's some stuff around class, I think, as well, that I think, it definitely seemed more diverse when I was younger. Now when I look at, I don't know, especially the people that would move to London, I mean, I think it's hardly, you're not going to see many kind of like non-middle class northern people moving to London because, I mean, it's just so expensive, right? But even thinking about like taking, I don't know, like I spent 10 or so years playing in bands and not really earning a living, but kind of getting by and whatnot. And it's like, who now in the kind of like with the economy like it is, who could spend 10 years to not really being that successful, but still kind of like just keeping plugging at it.
But don't they say comedians, it takes like...
I like how he's trying to just get it back to clowns.
Clowns. That's going to be the title of this episode, clowns.
You can't call it clown.
Don't they say that it takes 10 years, well, before social media, it would take 10 years of gigging like every night at every comedy club to make any, like to get in, to do anything.
I think it's just, I mean, I having watched it now for like so many years and being around people that are very successful, a lot of people that are not, like, I'm not saying there's no rhyme or reason, because I think all the people that were successful were hardworking, and I've not seen anybody have great success who was like not very hardworking. Even if they were a bit dysfunctional, they were still hardworking. But I honestly think, there's not that much rhyme or reason, really. I think you can be in the right time. You can be say you're making jazz 7 or 8 years ago, and then this whole wave of people interested in jazz comes along. You were kind of, but for most of the last 30 years, if you're making jazz, you were not going to do this as a job, right? You were going to play in a restaurant. You were, whereas if you're in like Sons of Kemet or like Ezra Collective, it's like, like you kind of came about at a time when that people were interested, and they were part of making people interested in it. But still, it's kind of lucky. Like if you're in a kind of like, if you're 4 or 5 white guys in an indie band right now, it's like, I don't think people want to hear.
There's
like,
an awful lot of them about.
But I don't think, but if you were kind of like in the late 90s, kind of early 2000s, and you were like 5 white guys in an indie band, it's like, that's what people were signing,
Most of my playlist is women, but that's because I'm a female singer. So I'm like aspiring, like listening to that. But I think it's so important to listen to new music, and I struggle with that as well because I'm like such a creature of habit. Like I have the same songs again and again. So I'm like really trying to like branch out, but it's hard.
Well, I think on both things, there's definitely my age group are a kind of in between generation, but probably even yours as well. That we're all still working out what the internet kind of like, I don't know, what does it mean? Like, when I think about like, there was a scarcity when I got into music, like you heard about an artist and then maybe you heard that they were influenced by, I don't know, Nick Cave, I don't know. So then it took me like a month to find a Nick Cave record or have some money or whatever to get
buy
that.
it.
Whereas
then you'd like treasure it.
But now it's like a deluge, right? Like now I go into the book club and everybody, all the staff are playing great music. But there's so much of it that actually, like, I don't even bother. I don't bother asking who songs are now. I'm just like, yeah, that's a good song. There are lots of them, and I think the same with the lineups of festivals. I think that there's a point, maybe about 2008 or something, where bands got big, and they're forever now big. You know, you look at, I don't know, Metallica and Green Day playing headlining Leeds Festival every year, and Eminem and whatever, and it's like, that's just not how music was before that. Like, you kind of crescendoed, and sure, like a handful of people made it to like Beyonce status. But like in general, if you were in a band, you were hot for a bit and then you kind of like calmed down. But I think there's been lots of at least good advances in terms of the conversations we're having around decentering. And this is obviously, it's not there or perfect, but at least there were conversations about decentering kind of like white guys and, you know, whatever. But I think you're really right that festivals are one of these places where it's like, but there's something not working there in that, I don't know, if you look at a great, I don't know, like an English teacher or whatever, it's like, I think they will break through. But I mean, how many other Pit Bloms or whatever are out there, and festivals are like, do I take a risk on that, or do I put on The Killers of Future Islands because I kind of already have the data on how many people are going to come see that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, festivals are terrible for it, aren't they? I mean,
yeah. And there's always uproar about every lineup.
Yeah.
Like, you see stuff like, I saw so much about the Glastonbury lineup, like loads of people were really pissed off about it, and I was like, but then loads of people were really happy, and it's like, you're never going to please everyone, but you're going, you still have bought that ticket. Like, we're still going to.
Yeah.
Because people still want to go.
Yeah.
So it is completely up to the festival to decide.
The interesting thing will probably be when enough time has passed that insurgent things like We Out Here have like started to really challenge like your Leeds festivals and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's just consent, or when, you know, these festivals have people working there that have grown up in a different kind of politics. You know, I suspect, I don't know, but a lot of organisations probably still kind of like a lot of white guys. Really.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of the story of everyone's life, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are in a time of kind of like a time of change in that across the board organisations don't, you know, if I look at like, I was at a meeting of kind of cultural leaders in the city a couple of days ago, and those kind of events, people are really careful to make sure they're kind of balanced lineups. And if anything, and I don't, not to get into this, but I think if anything, kind of go the other way. So like, you will have like all female lineups, or you'll have like a proportion of non-white people that isn't representative of, say, a city like Leeds that is quite a white city, but you will have like lineups of panels that are not really like that. So I think
like, what's the right way to do it?
It's I mean, it's so impossible. Like,
it's so impossible, because you're right. If you're going too far the other way, it's not going to get the same amount of like pull towards it, because people aren't going to resonate and then feel like they want to get involved. I don't know. Yeah,
it's really hard, because I think people don't want to feel like it's like propaganda. Like, I think people don't want to feel like, this poster just isn't what is happening in the city. But on the other hand, it's like, well, what do you do? Because you kind of, if you kind of represent the city, and you're in a kind of, you know, Leeds is 85% white. You know, my nieces and nephew are kind of dual heritage, and I don't know how often they've seen themselves. I was joking with one of the classes I teach, actually. I taught a class, I think it was critical theory, and I was saying how, like, when I grew up, like, there was a period where nearly every lead character in a film was called Jack, was generally kind of like a white guy, often with dark hair. And I was like I literally grew, like, it's mental. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but I literally grew up, and like Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt or whatever would be playing a character called Jack. And so it was kind of very easy to imagine myself as like the hero, right? Of whatever the protagonist. So, I mean, I hear you, and I don't want to be kind of, spoon-fed for something that feels unreal. And then at the same time, I also get that, you know, for a period, it probably, the pendulum has to swing probably too far the other way to do some kind of repair, and then
That's like that's with everything. Like with every like issue, it's like how far do you have to swing it? It's gonna piss off everyone who is favourite. Well, no, it's not. Like I'm now in my head thinking about like sexism, but like if you like swung it and like women were then completely in charge, like it's not fair either. Like how, and then that is gonna put men at a disadvantage. It's just like there's no right way.
There's so many complexities. I mean, I think if you look at kind of like, I don't know, if you look at I mean, I think some of the problems you see probably in like a Trumpy Brexit-y world is because there are very simple messages going out there about like who are the winners. And I think if you were in a kind of like a white working class area, like I think people are like, oh, I don't feel like I'm the kind of winner.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there are kind of invisible advantages that you have. You know, I mean, you know, however much I might feel like, there have been points of struggle, and you know, I've had you've had mental health stuff, whatever. Still, if I'd not been white, that would have still been harder still. So, but I agree with you. I mean, how do you get these things right? You know, I think so long as people that have opportunities and privilege are acknowledging that and are creating space for others, like that's something. And you know, I guess that's something we all can.
Do you feel like Leeds is a city where there is space for everyone? Like, how do you feel the music scene?
That's a great question. Do I feel like that? I feel like in many ways Leeds is pretty welcoming, and like when I think about, I don't know, the people that I know that are like Leedsy people, or the people that have kind of settled here, I think, you know, when I have friends or that have kind of come up from London, people are like, oh my God, like, you know, I don't know, like the person in the shop was just up for a chat, and you know, I don't know, somebody did something kind of for free that in London they definitely would have wanted money to do, or you know, people say thanks on the bus, and so I think all that is true. I think that, I mean, one thing I think is that like racially it's not as integrated as it could be. I certainly think when you're in London, you know, or Lisbon, you feel like areas are more integrated. And you know, I've only lived in London for a couple of years, so it's not like I know them anywhere near as much. I think the other thing is like Leeds could just be a bit more kind of ambitious and a bit bolder, and I think being kind of diverse helps you do that, because I think, you know, if you've got the same kinds of people that have led to a situation where the city isn't as ambitious as it could be, having other people come along that are quite like them probably isn't going to change that up. Whereas, you know, I don't know.
And they're naturally going to want to work with them. Because, like, we've got similar view, like, we like the
it's
same
not threatening, and, you know, whereas I think, you know, this period that we're in, it's like super political, you know, I mean, I think Leeds being more diversely kind of integrated could be really helpful for Leeds, just being a better city, really. Yeah. You know, I mean,
and churning out better music. What do you think of the music that has been created in Leeds? Has it changed, like, in your opinion, because you've been here, like, for a while, how much has it changed?
I mean, it just changes all the time, right? Yeah. I mean, I think that
it comes back around.
Yeah, I think that any city has interesting people, has young people, and people are always trying to kind of express themselves. I think that the kind of guitar-y scene, like Leeds are really heavily kind of like, it was just all guitars when I was younger, but it was really vibrant, and it was amazing, really. And you know, like a real kind of wealth of people that knew each other and spent all day on forums chatting to each other. But, you know, then there's been kind of like really interesting dance music scenes that have come out of the city. I think that jazz, like a few years ago, was really, really interesting in that it was very hard to pin down what was going on. Yeah. I think the pandemic was probably a bit just destructive to that. I think I think having like a year and a half where, you know, the music scene was so hot at that point, having a year and a half where people are not around each other, some people have had to go back to their parents and other parts of the country, I think was really difficult for it. So I think we're probably at a point now where don't know, all creative scenes have a kind of like a cycle, and I think we're at a kind of death kind of point where winter sounds a bit easier than death, right? I think we're at a point where there's kind of green shoots of like the thing that will come next, and I think that's a really exciting period.
Interesting.
It's an exciting period for things to be in.
Do you feel like you can sort of predict it?
Because I think you can feel it. Yeah, I think I mean, a bit like, I don't know, maybe you've got a friend who like goes on certain cycles or whatever. Like you can kind of.
Okay, you know what's coming.
Yeah, you just like okay, like there's this period where I actually think right now there's some exciting stuff, but this is not as exciting as a city can get. I don't think. So I think
there's things to come in Leeds.
Yeah, because there'll be people your age that will be like, it'd be better if there was a night that like did X or Y, and then suddenly those things start to like
and a live sax and a live singer.
Yeah, these things start to kind of compound, and you're like, now there's a new. Whatever, like sculpture scene or whatever, there'll be something kind of like happen. So I think Leeds is great, and there's lots of stuff going on, and you know, especially that jazz scene has matured now. So a lot of those are like late 20s, and they're starting. Jasmine Myra and Fergus Quill are doing really good stuff around the country, but they're kind of starting to be national musicians now. They're not like when they were like tour.
They're leaving like the community.
Yeah, when they were like 23, 24, they were gigging every night in Leeds, and that was part of what made the kind of blood of the city feel a certain way.
It's interesting because when you were in London, did you miss the community in Leeds? Or like, were you kind of relieved to be back in Leeds?
Yeah.
Or how did you find it?
To be honest, I'd spent so long in Leeds and so long in the music scene that when I left to live in York for a year and then London, I was just glad to be out of it, really. Yeah. And I think as well, like, I love scenes of about this size. Like, I've worked in venues about the size of the book club, like, since I was your age. And I love them, but they're like so intense in terms of just the kind of social information that you have. You know that person's now playing in that person's band, and they've got this artist doing their artwork, and that's kind of interesting. And that person has actually fallen out with their band, and they've started a new night that's completely different genre, and your mind becomes filled with all this, and that's what makes you good, right? Because you actually care. You're like, I'm sat there on a night thinking, I wonder if they're like, you know, it seems that all the kids that were on the jazz course at the conservatoire are now DJs. That's kind of interesting. Like, what's going to happen there? Are they leaving a gap that's going to get filled by something? But when I left Leeds, I just stopped caring. And for a while, it was kind of nice. And I think as well, local scenes have a lot of benefit, and they're really good, and you feel really rooted. You know, you get your coffee from the same place, and there's a fruit shop that, I don't know, whatever, and people go to Kirkgate Market or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's nice also to be in a city like London where you're just like, it is more cosmopolitan. Yeah. People are, you know, doing something in LA at some point, and it kind of breaks you out of feeling like this is so important. Like, I think there were points in your life where the local is right that feels important. Because I've also got friends that, I don't know, they're living in other cities around the world, and they're totally disconnected from their local scenes. They work online for kind of remotely, and they're not really a part of any kind of local scene. And I think there's something sad about that. But I also think you can get kind of like your kind of horizon can be a bit diminished if you remain part of a local scene all the time. Yeah.
So were you doing anything to do with music in London?
Not really. I mean, I kind of helped someone run a little venue near King's Cross, but I mean, I was really just faffing. I mean, I basically was just like going to anything that was invited to, go to parties.
Not functioning again.
I was, it was like, I mean, just like, there's just so many interesting people to meet as well, I think, in London. So I was just kind of soaking the city up really, and looking PhD funding. And then obviously we started the place here. I still wasn't going to come back. Came back and then got PhD funding here. And then suddenly I was like all in on Leeds again. And it was like,
and are you glad you are now?
Yeah, I really am. I mean, I think I probably at some point would spend more time outside the city again, because I think you kind of, a bit like we were saying about the cycles, you kind of get to the point where, I don't know, Project House opens. I'm like, that's interesting. Like, something else happens. That's interesting. But but you also can get to the point where you're like, oh, cool, like 4 interesting things happened this year. Like maybe if I lived in like Lisbon or Lagos or for 6 months, I'd be like, every day I'm like, oh, wow,
Have
that's...
you spent a lot of time in Lisbon?
I just visited friends there, really.
Yeah.
But I really like it.
I
Have you been?
love Lisbon. It's my favourite city.
It's a
I've
great
only
city,
been
right?
once, but it's brilliant. Although I took like the shoes I'm wearing now, and it was really hot, and they've got no grip on it, and because it's so hilly and like slippery, it was just a nightmare. But it's such a cool city.
No, I'm going in June.
Really?
Yeah, it's a great city because it's...
What's the music like there then? Do you know much?
Well, I think there's lots of influence of like because it's got quite a lot of Brazilians live there, and so it has that feel of like feeling kind of Latin, but still kind of like a bit European.
Oh, it's
I
such a
thought
great
as well, it
place.
just felt really kind of multicultural in a way that was like quite laid back. Whereas I feel like I don't know, like I know a lot of people who live in Berlin, but I feel like Berlin's maybe got to the point where it's like it's become that city that everybody wants to be in, and I'm like, I think that I should start to make a move fairly soon. I've got to see my mum actually.
Oh,
yeah.
that's sweet. Okay, one last question. Sorry. Have you got any advice for people trying to get into the music scene in Leeds? Like, say, if you're starting at uni.
Sure, yeah.
You want to get...
I mean, I really would say, that if you contact people and, I've got somebody working full time for me at the moment, and she basically just sent me a cover letter that just showed she knew exactly what we were about.
Really?
She was like, I really want to work on X, Y, Z. Basically, this is the organisation I want to work with. And I think, quite often, like, people just want to be around other people that are really enthusiastic about the same things they are, right? And you can't do everything yourself, especially, you get to my age and, like, I don't know, like, I'm not out 6 nights a week like I used to be. So you kind of need a team around you that bring other bits. I mean, the other thing I think I always say to people who, like, sometimes I have like a coffee with someone who wants to like talk about how they get to work in music. And I really think if you're really hardworking and you're kind of pretty nice / kind of honest, you just kind of graft, but in a way that's like, not about you, it's about contributing. I just think you'll find a way. Yeah. I think people, people that I've seen that really want to work in music or culture and they're kind of hardworking, they do it. Like, it's not as like, I hate it, for instance, when, you get kind of like a typical kind of Guardian thing of like, like only if you went to like fucking Harrow can you work in, and like, and sure, there are all those kind of inequalities that are there. But actually, if you really want to work in the arts and you work hard and you're a bit relentless and you're willing to live on not much for a bit, like you can get there, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's been such a lovely chat.
Yeah, it's been so nice. Yeah. It went in loads of different directions.
Yeah, it said it all.
Yeah, we've said it all. People are going to love it.